Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this Telit webinar, Why You Should Bundle Cellular Connectivity and IoT Hardware. I'm Amanda Flink, the head of global events here at Telit, and I am pleased to lead our discussion here today. First, I'd like to introduce our speakers. We have got Adam Cousin, our senior technical specialist at Telit. And second, we have got Sean Rudnick, our director of deal management at Telit. Now, just before I hand it over to Adam to start our presentation, I have a few quick reminders. We will have some time to answer questions at the end of our presentation today. So simply submit a question by posting in the questions box, which is located near the bottom of your screen. Also, be sure to check out the resources section for some additional information on our topic today. And finally, we will send out the replay link in the coming days to all attendees at the conclusion. And with that, Adam, I will hand it over to you to kick us off today.
Thanks, Amanda, for the introduction, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us here today. So today we're going to talk about why you should bundle cellular connectivity and IoT hardware. This is a pretty hot topic, so let's kick off the first slide. So by 2030, analysts predict that IoT could enable up to 12.6 trillion in value. 30 billion IoT devices will be online by 2025. Telit helps connect and manage a new one of these nearly every second. Now, clearly, in order to facilitate this, we're going to need to do things faster, more efficiently, perhaps even with some zero-touch onboarding. Manual implementations certainly add cost and time to every deployment. So the more we can do around this, the better. What Telit specializes in is the first mile of IoT. This is where you take whatever it is you have at the edge, environmental sensors or tracking products or health monitoring, and the transition of that data and how it passes through the various interconnects and eventually ends up at whatever enterprise-grade cloud service provider or app that you are running. Now, this process is not getting any easier. Certainly, the edge hardware has become more complex. The data points become more. The interested parties in those data points have increased as well. So, of course, where you need to send this data, what data sets need to be collected, whether this is data at rest or data in transit. The IoT modules that facilitate this connectivity perhaps are no longer based on the cellular infrastructure that mobile phones have historically used and sweat tested over the many, many decades of operation. These new infrastructures like Cat M1 and narrowband IoT certainly are posing some additional challenges around what protocols used and indeed what SIM you choose, because roaming agreements don't necessarily include these technologies. We then move on to our connectivity offering. So in this respect, this is certainly where we can help you. Permanent roaming restrictions or local HLR onboarding are things that we can assist with where necessary, or providing a one SIM fits all solution. And this in turn creates the connectivity through a cloud platform. So the overarching element here is what we term as OneEdge. OneEdge is essentially a zero-touch onboarding platform which facilitates the onward connectivity to these traditionally heavy lifting and TCP secure-centric edge services, but allowing connectivity through a more lightweight framework. Sean, do you want to take this one?
Sure. The building blocks that we'll talk about here, when you're referencing IoT, it's broken down into three categories, three pillars, if you will. It starts with the physical modules, the hardware element, via a cellular module, short range, etc. Then you, of course, have the connectivity component, which historically meant inserting a SIM card to offer you a connection to a network. And lastly, the platform, the software and services that are ultimately helping you manage and interact with your IoT deployment. Now, when we merge the three of these together and bundle them, we're actually able to unlock a tremendous advantage to any of these deployments. So there's quite a few, and I'll highlight some of those that I think are most relevant. First of all, there are certain features that are only available when bundling either all three of these or any combination, two modules with connectivity, modules with platform, etc. So some of the more popular ones here at Telit, thankfully, we offer the modules, connectivity, and platforms all in-house. So we're able to mix and match these to meet our customers' needs. And we have features like our SIMwise, which would be our IUICC offering, and that is SIM-less technology. So a module that has all of the necessary credentials of a SIM card built into the module itself. So you're getting one component and you don't need a SIM card, but yet you're still able to connect to the cellular network. Adam had already touched on OneEdge, our very advanced device management platform as well. And while we definitely play well with others here at Telit, there's no doubt that being able to offer all of these elements and then mixing and matching to our customers' needs really makes it a lot easier should anything go wrong. So historically, if you had an issue, you would have to start reaching out to your connectivity provider, to your hardware supplier. Is something wrong with the platform? And obviously, the first stages of troubleshooting are pointing fingers elsewhere. So you get to skip that. When you're working with Telit and you're bundling our products, we take responsibility from A to Z. So whether the product ends up being a connectivity issue or it is related physically to the module, either way, we're going to own responsibility for that. We're going to make sure that we solve that problem, but we'll also be able to solve it in a much less painful fashion. Obviously, we know who to reach out to. We can hold each other accountable and quickly access the right resources to get your deployment up and running as quickly and smoothly as possible. And now those issues, though, should be quite few and far between because we extensively test our modules, our connectivity and platform together. That's something that, like I said, while we do play well with others and you could use a Telit module with connectivity that is not from Telit and vice versa, we extensively test and try to add as much additional value around the Telit bundle as possible. So having a unified management platform as well to interact with your deployment, see everything side by side, that's something that is really offering a tremendous amount to our customers and making their lives much easier. And I think today, with the additional complexities that we see in the market, anything that can take away that pain and get you to market faster by removing hurdles, that's something that's almost invaluable.
Thanks, Sean. So I'm going to touch a bit now on the OneEdge component. So if you remember at the start of the presentation, I mentioned the overarching cloud platform that helps essentially provide the interconnect between the lightweight framework needs of the edge hardware and the more extensive TCP security-led elements of the enterprise services. So we've built OneEdge exactly with that in mind. It's a bit of a Swiss Army knife when it comes to what it can do, and it can bring different levels of capability to your edge application for elements that perhaps are things that you haven't had to consider before. So certainly with the sunset of 2G and 3G services, not necessarily in that order, depending on where you are in the world, these new NB-IoT and Cat-M infrastructures are presenting some hurdles, and certainly with regards to the device's deployment, it's becoming increasingly important to provide a level of device management. Now, OneEdge is built on top of the OMA SpecWorks lightweight M2M, and this uses coincidentally the same security elements, so the same credential that Sean mentioned is used by our SIMwise. It uses a public key exchange element, the same credential, in order to provide a zero-touch bootstrap to our OneEdge service, and this is done seamlessly because we already know the credential for all of the modems that we produce. This means that onboarding to our lightweight M2M service is far easier than anybody else's when you're using a Telit module. After that, it's very much a standards-based lightweight M2M object-oriented framework. And within this, we provide device management, of course. That's the very nature of the lightweight M2M specification. This allows for zero-touch onboarding, remote provisioning configuration, troubleshooting, and of course software updates at the edge. We provide edge logic, so you're able to create, if that, then this type scenarios within the device, which allow a level of autonomy, meaning that the device doesn't necessarily have to be a data in transit device all the time. It can perform as a data at rest and react on the data set it's collecting at the edge and make its own decision as to whether or not it should be transmitting those data sets or not. And this, of course, can lighten the payloads and lighten the frequency of operation of the radio modem's front end, which in turn increases battery life. Sorry, get that around the right way one day. Embedded security, this secure element essentially defines an end-to-end encryption, and of course the thing identity is then taken care of as well. So we're no longer requiring a protocol-led security layer like TLS 1.2 or 1.3. This very much uses a key exchange and provides a DTLS for constrained application protocol. We have our connectivity services and management, which sits within the same pane of glass. So all of the billing engine and SIM management platform sits within the same pane of glass as the device management and potentially application enablement ability of OneEdge. And of course, as I mentioned before, data integration. So delivering data to third parties, people like Azure and AWS, whose typical onboarding requirement is using HTTPS or MQTTS or one of the S's, something with a secure layer about it, which can add cost to your data payload and decrease battery life. We can actually take care of directly on a platform-to-platform basis. We touch a little bit more on device management. You can see a pretty dashboard here, and this is built up of predefined lightweight M2M objects, which are collecting information which are pertaining to the device's connection at the edge. So this is very much a control plane element. This has really got nothing to do with the application layer. In fact, the application layer can exist in parallel with this using whatever protocol you like if you choose. But the device management element allows your product to effectively report back to the server its current status, giving you greater resolution of information about network connection, signal level, signal quality, whether or not it's changed cell base stations, whether it's changed countries, a lot of information about what's going on at the edge. Now, as I mentioned before, the way that this can act is as a simple addition to your existing sensor application data channel. So your edge devices may already be talking to one of these enterprise-grade cloud service providers using their existing protocols. And we don't have to touch that. The lightweight M2M element can actually be enabled in conjunction with this and is already present in many of the modems that we do produce today and have produced for the last couple of years. What this means is that with a few AT commands, you can enable this and actually start taking advantage of device management at the edge, firmware over the air management, something that a lot of customers still don't architect in, especially those that are based in Europe. I know it's a requirement of US operators to include this kind of functionality, but in Europe it's still not a requirement. So being able to offer this as a turnkey solution certainly adds benefit, especially if it doesn't have to interact at any level with the existing way the device behaves. Now, of course, should you wish to take advantage of the lightening of the payloads because of the reduced overhead of the protocol and security layer, then OneEdge does provide the opportunity to be able to create a framework around an object-oriented application payload capability as well. And you can either build this out as a sensor by sensor with a reading by reading type framework, or you can build it out as a lump of binary data captured as a compressed time series format, which we've already pre-built and can decompress within our service, ready for transmitting out to any of the aforementioned third-party enterprises. Now, this certainly requires a little bit of diligence if it's something you want to take advantage of, and would require some additional resource at the customer end in order to realize, but actually the cost savings in the end that can be leveraged and enhanced battery life certainly will pay for themselves in the long term. it's a page of numbers, and some of you might switch off at this stage, but just bear with me a second. So we did some live testing on narrowband IoT versus Cat-M1, and actually lightweight M2M versus MQTT using TLS 1.2. And in both scenarios, these are using an AES 128 encryption. So the overheads or the level of security should be the same. But as you can see here, transmitting exactly the same environmental sensor readings, and there were only 4 readings in each payload, and assuming that you're bringing context up each time and tearing it back down again as per a battery-powered application. Certainly connecting a device to a lightweight M2M service and transmitting those payloads results in a significantly lower actual data transfer than using MQTT. And actually you can see that using narrowband IoT could result in larger payloads of data depending on the use case. And of course each payload of data is not only cost, if we relate this back to SIMs, but also it is battery life, because for every byte you send is an extra bit of battery you're burning because the RF front end has to stay active. And of course, this illustrates perfectly the type of consultative approach that you'll get from us when it comes to really wallboarding out your IoT application, making sure that you're selecting the right module with the right protocol, with the right SIM solution. We'd be more than happy to sell you a fixed price bundle, but in the end, it'd be much better to refine that and be able to offer you something that's fit for purpose with scalability and a bit of future proofing built in as well. Not just based on expectation, but based on real world testing. So this, I think, is probably a graphic which explains the difference that we can add to your solution. One of the other additional things that we can do, because we have the platform and connectivity under the same essential hood, is by providing connectivity through OneEdge, what we're able to do is overcome a typical limitation for always-on applications. So if you take maybe a traditional cellular application where the device has to remain on, it has to remain with the context up, and it has to be contactable by the edge server at any moment in time. Say like a domestic central heating system where you have an app on your phone and you need to be able to change the temperature in your house, and you want it to happen quickly, not wait for half an hour for the modem to make its next outbound connection. It kind of has to happen when you want it to happen. One of the prerequisites of that is the device at the edge has to be able to maintain the connection to the server, and is bound by the requirements of the service. So if this is an AWS or an Azure server, it has to send keep alive packets in order to maintain the socket connection. But on top of that, it also has to send packets in order to overcome the core network, gateway, and network address translation layer and firewall. Now, these packet keep alives are not inconsiderable in size. And actually, if you add them up over the many days, weeks, months, and years that your device is in operation, it can add up to significantly more data payload than maybe your application actually needs. So what can we do about this? By basically creating an interconnect between our core network, and this is a Telit-owned core network, so we're not reselling someone else's core now. This is our own core with our own partner carriers. We're able to create a dedicated connection through to our OneEdge server. What this does is it basically bypasses the network address translation and firewall, and it facilitates the ability for the OneEdge server to be able to talk back to the devices at the edge, with the only requirement being to send a keep alive maybe every 3 to 4 hours, which is commensurate with the natural IP address rotation at the edge. This can massively reduce data overhead. And to give you a quick idea on what that might look like, and this very much is a worst case scenario, but basically an MQTT keep alive message, including overhead payload and ACK, is around 137 bytes, and it could need to be sent as frequently as twice a minute. If you add this up over the course of a day, it's 400 kilobytes of overhead. Add that up on a monthly basis, it ends up at around 12 meg. 12 meg to facilitate somebody changing the temperature in their house infrequently, or maybe it's some other application. But you get the idea on how this kind of feature could add significant cost to an edge deployment, when actually we can probably make this pain pretty much go away, reduce the overhead, and essentially do ourselves out of 12 meg a month from a connectivity standpoint if we were a pure connectivity provider. But actually this is much more important, and it goes back to the consultative approach of how we want to make things work better and more efficiently and more sustainably. Sean, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, thank you, Adam. So as you just mentioned, our core network, so at Telit, we have our own cellular IoT core network. And if I had to summarize in a word, I would actually say flexibility. Having our own core network has unlocked incredible flexibility, both for Telit as a company, but really for our partners who are using our services. The flexibility that we have today and the flexibility that is available for us tomorrow, as far as new technologies, new partnerships, etc., that's really the key element here. As opposed to working with a single operator, which of course, don't get me wrong, there are tremendous operators around the world, many who we're partnered with. They offer a great service and they have a tremendous network, but that's all they're able to offer. They are locked in to one specific agenda, if you will, one focus, and that's all they know, breathe, sleep, eat. Here at Telit, having our own core network has allowed us to be much more dynamic and also focus on what's important to our customers. So that's been our approach, is what's important to Telit is what's important to our customers. And keeping that in mind, that is exactly how we built this network from the ground up and how we continue to make decisions about the network as far as its capabilities and the directions that we want to take the network moving forward. So by default, our IoT core network, as we call it, Telit Next, is a multi-IMSI solution. For those who are a little less familiar, the IMSI is a unique identifier for an operator's network. So essentially what's happening is normally if you were to work with one operator, you of course have access to their network, and in some cases they may have partner networks or roaming agreements in place, which would be a reciprocal agreement. For example, a US operator may sign a roaming agreement with a Canadian operator to allow those crossing the border to maintain connectivity, regardless of the network that they're using. In our solution, having this multi-IMSI approach, it means that we've actually merged together the IMSIs from multiple operators, but combined them under the hood of one product. So we've essentially taken the best of the best in our mind. We have, again, with the consideration of our customers' needs at the forefront, built a product that we think answers those needs, and IoT needs are definitely different than the consumer space. And we've worked with different networks and continue to work with many networks around the world to create this mashup, this multi-IMSI product that answers the call most effectively. And the device is pre-programmed with logic, so it knows when to use which operator based on its location, and there are custom options as well, should you need to have this additional level of control over the IMSIs. And a significant advantage here as well, besides the convenience of Telit trying to build what we think is essentially the best product for the market, but you also have just an additional layer of coverage, a backup when things don't go well. So if a specific network is suffering some sort of outage, having some trouble in their network, using the multi-IMSI capabilities, you are able to utilize a different IMSI that is already pre-installed into this SIM card, which is hopefully not experiencing whatever issue the first IMSI is experiencing. There's also a very hot topic these days, EUICC, embedded connectivity. This is a little different than the multi-IMSI approach. So whereas the multi-IMSI approach means that we've taken a few different options and mashed them together under one hood, with EUICC it's different. EUICC is almost more of a Rolodex. So you have a number of profiles available to you. A profile referring to a given operator's offering. So here we have a few logos for the example, AT&T and Telit. So Telit in this case would be representing Telit Next, our core network, and AT&T, of course, one of the largest US operators. An example here could be a customer who has a global deployment and maybe would like to utilize the Telit Next offering in a multi-IMSI capacity, roaming around the world, attaching to different networks as that device jumps around from continent to continent. But once it lands in the US, you want to take advantage of the native network. Instead of roaming on the AT&T network, you can actually, and of course remotely, adjust the profile from Telit Next and take on the AT&T profile. What that means is you essentially have almost like a virtual PC. You have different options available to you, and at the click of a button, you're a chameleon. You've changed your identity. And this is very different than roaming. It actually is helping you circumvent a lot of the challenges that roaming can create, be it the fact that you may not be wanted on a specific network in a roaming capacity. Not all networks and not all countries are very friendly to the topic of roaming. There are also, even in situations where roaming is acceptable, there are certain disadvantages, sometimes technological disadvantages or support disadvantages should something go wrong. So in this case, you effectively, once switching to the AT&T profile, you are an AT&T SIM card through and through. That is exactly how their network recognizes your device. There is no difference as if someone walked into an AT&T retail store and purchased one of the SIM cards off the shelf. So, and you can have multiple profiles. This is very helpful to customers in different use cases. Not to be confused, though, with iSIM or IUICC technology, which is integrated, and that would be like our SIM-wise offering, which refers to our SIM-less technology. Now, the interesting thing, though, is these EUICC capabilities can actually be on a standard plug-in SIM, just a regular plastic in any of the form factors. It can also be available on our SIM-wise offering. So having a module which includes the SIM capabilities without physically having the second component of a SIM card can also be programmed with our EUICC capabilities and with the EUICC profiles that I'm referring to. So the Telit Next offering that I've been mentioning, our home network, is actually a collaboration that today includes close to 240 or so countries and territories around the world, over 600 networks from 2G, 3G, LTE, Cat-M, narrowband actually just launched for us as well, and 5G right around the corner. So as I said, we've taken the focus of our customers and put that at the forefront of our decisions as far as where we're deploying, which countries, which networks, which technologies. And in doing so, geo-redundancy has also been very important. And we have both physical as well as cloud-based sites and around the world, not just one of each, but there are multiple on different continents just to make sure that we have that continuity. And to the same point, the security standards that we've put in place, that's paramount for us. We deal with a lot of sensitive applications that our customers have, and it's important that they know anything they're doing with us is secure with the highest standards. And as far as any access services, different types of VPNs, private APNs, etc., there are multiple options that we can provide. Again, thinking of that keyword flexibility, thanks to having our own core network. And our connectivity management, not to be confused with the device management that Adam spoke heavily about, OneEdge, but the connectivity management, just allowing you to really take control of your deployment as far as seeing the deployment, monitoring it, being able to both analyze the data reactively, but also have all sorts of proactive triggers and alerts set up in the system to make sure if this device uses this much data or if this device is still communicating after this much time. You can set up all sorts of triggers and alerts, which can really help you prevent a disaster and an expensive scenario down the road when you would normally find out after the damage is done. We, of course, have our 24/7, 365 global support. So we have around the world multiple locations set up where at any day, any time, we have some of the brightest folks in the industry available, and not just like a chat bot that you have to speak with and hope eventually you'll hear from someone. It's a phone number you can pick up right away, get someone on the line, help you with your connectivity deployment, help you when that module seems like there's something wrong. And again, if you're able to bundle the services together and products of Telit, then this 24/7, 365 support just became much more powerful. Unfortunately, as excited as we may be to help our customers at any time, there are maybe other companies who keep different hours or are based physically in one time zone versus another, and having to wait until they wake up, until they respond, that downtime can almost be dangerous for some applications. Lastly, just to highlight, as we call Telit Next Plus, which is our EUICC offering, the multi-profile option that we have available. And some of the more popular use cases, localization is one that I mentioned before, a global deployment that has devices that may visit the United States and then want to take advantage of a native network like AT&T, becoming a chameleon and switching your skin to become an AT&T SIM card. There's also times that you can take advantage even from a cost perspective and optimize the pricing that much more by utilizing a native network. On the right-hand side of the screen, though, we reference a completely different scenario, this provider switch or bring your own connectivity. It's really almost like an insurance policy. It allows people that freedom to know that the technology they're taking from Telit is truly future-proof, not only within Telit, but to the point that if for any reason you had to use a different operator, a specific operator somewhere, and Telit couldn't help you, you wouldn't have to go and physically swap the SIM card of that device. You could actually remotely access that device to change to whichever network is needed.
All right. Thank you so much, Sean and Adam, both. That was some great information you guys covered here. Now, audience, before we get to the questions, I am going to drop a quick poll on your screen. If you'd like to have one of our experts contact you directly, please respond here on the poll that you see, and we'll be sure that somebody reaches out to you. And we do have time for some questions now, which I've seen some come in. So if you guys are ready, we'll just dive right into those. The first question that I see here, do your SIMs work with NB-IoT in Europe?
Can I take this one, Sean?
Yes, please. So
No
the Telit Next SIM cards work all around the world in hundreds of countries and territories, many hundreds of networks. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. The longer answer is, of course, we're dependent on those networks to have that technology available and commercially launched. So it's a bit of a work in progress, meaning as time goes on, we continue to work with more and more partners as they bring their narrowband IoT networks online. We are adding them to the Telit Next network. So that list will continue to grow as more networks deploy narrowband around the world.
Great, thanks, Sean. And sort of similarly here, I've got a question about India. So can you tell me about Telit connectivity in India?
In India, it's absolutely one of the countries that we cover as well. So we're partnered with a few different networks in India. And if there's a more specific question, an application or a use case that someone would like to discuss, then reaching out to us would help us be a little more specific and getting them the best option.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean. Next question. Do we need to use your SIMs to be able to use Telit OneEdge?
I can take this one, I think. So for OneEdge, there's actually no requirement to use Telit connectivity. I've had this question a few times from people. Just because we do bundle doesn't mean that we don't play nice with others, as Sean said. So the OneEdge server is just a server. The prerequisite of OneEdge is that you're using a Telit module because it contains the keys and the necessary applet that's running in order to access the OneEdge and provide that seamless one-touch onboarding. But actually, you can use any connectivity. Sorry, Sean. And any one SIM will work with that particular service.
Thanks, Adam. Next question, and Sean, I think you touched on this a bit, but maybe you could go into it a bit more. Can I use EUICC and Multi-IMSI together?
Yeah, so absolutely. In fact, the use case I was describing earlier with Telit Next and AT&T is a perfect use case. So Telit Next on its own is a Multi-IMSI offering by default. But if you are utilizing our Telit Next Plus offering, our EUICC offering and capabilities, then Telit Next would just be one of the many profiles you can choose to have available. So if you, again, if you think of this as some sort of Rolodex, Telit Next is in there, AT&T and whoever the third, fourth MNO, all side by side. And at the click of a button, you are selecting which one to enable. So you could be using Telit Next in a multi-IMSI capacity for minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, and suddenly have a need to move to some other network and you want to accomplish that with EUICC, it's absolutely available.
Sean, I think this next question may be for you as well. Can I add other profiles in the future with EUICC?
Yes, 100%. So when you purchase the SIM cards from us, if you're doing this not with SimWise, but with a regular plastic plug-in standard SIM, we can have the SIM pre-programmed with the profiles that you need. So again, and for the example, if you told us you'd like to use Telit Next and AT&T as the two profiles that fit your needs for your deployment, when we send you the SIM card, they can already have those two profiles downloaded and available to the units. But if tomorrow you decide that you have a need in a different region of the world for a different operator, you can download that profile remotely. That's actually the beauty of EUICC, is the remote control that you have over the device and its connectivity.
Great, thank you. Next question I have, if you wanted to deploy something globally for mobile asset monitoring, what technology would you suggest?
That's a big question. We'd have to dig a bit deeper into the exact application. So if this is battery powered, if it's battery powered, I'd probably say something like a Cat M plus 2G at the moment. That would probably give you a pretty decent coverage. Add that together with the Telit Next global SIM. If it's global asset monitoring, this thing's quite transient, then you've got no real issues with roaming or permanent roaming restrictions, because I wouldn't expect it to stay in country any length of time. But if it did, of course, we can do, as Sean said, this localization using our Telit Next Plus EUICC. If it's battery powered, then you might want to take advantage of OneEdge. Certainly if the devices are in far-flung countries and you need to maybe do a firmware update or to change a particular setting pertaining to the connectivity in order to maintain its connection, then you want a bit of device management. But then if you need to transfer a bit more data or you've got a bit more power available, then we've got Global Cat 1. Again, this supports OneEdge and the Multi-IMSI SIM and everything else. So depending on the application, I think for sure we've got a solution that will fit. I just need to talk through the exact specifics of whoever asked this question in order to give them a more complete answer.
Great, thanks, Adam. Next question, isn't it risky to use one provider for multiple products? And I don't know if you both want to touch on this or if one of you want to grab it.
I'll take it, Adam. So I would say the opposite. I think in this case, first of all, Telit has done an incredible job as far as the stability of our products go. Our modules have about 2 decades worth of a really great reputation as far as the quality of the modules and their stability. Our connectivity, again, we have proven time and time again to the stability of the network, and especially now that for a few years we've had our own IoT core network that has given us tremendous control. I mentioned before the geo-redundant sites that we have available, the high levels of security that we've implemented, and then utilizing these different cellular technologies like the Multi-IMSI and EUICC solutions. If the challenge that you're having is related to a specific IMSI or a specific network, we now have ways that didn't exist years ago to help your device connect to a different IMSI or different network that is not having an issue and keep your connectivity online. And should you run into an issue, which is, that's life, things happen, I think your resolution is going to come in a much less painful fashion and much faster when working with a provider like Telit, who is able to see the big picture. And like I said, instead of working with multiple vendors and having them first point fingers at each other, then finally figure out, okay, it's not you, it's me. Now actually get together, start scheduling calls and become familiar maybe with each other's both personnel, technologies, etc. We get to skip so much of that and really get our customers back to business as fast as possible.
I guess just to add a little bit on that, because if we rewind it a little bit further, and the way that companies traditionally choose who they use and the personalities, I guess, within organizations who choose, it's super duper easy these days for one person within an organization who's designing the product to pick a cellular modem, like a Cat-M, a narrowband device, okay, because it's global, it's worldwide, it's low cost, it ticks all the boxes, right? And then somebody else within the organization goes out and approaches all the network vendors. Now, does the person who goes out and picks the SIM card understand the limitations of the modem and the roaming requirements, the fact that it isn't a simple case of going out to a network operator and going, I need this many megs over this many months for this many years, please. Thank you very much. It's much more complex now when we've got the roaming scenarios and everything else. We've got situations with protocols that aren't necessarily completely appropriate for particular network technologies, and the person that chooses the module from the design phase, maybe the person that chooses the enterprise server doesn't understand that there's limitations in the protocol requirements and the latency and bandwidth available on these networks, which basically makes the modem incompatible with the enterprise service. So it's very easy to pick 3 things that don't work together. And I see this a lot. And often what happens is the product gets designed, it goes through approvals, because of course it will pass regulatory approvals just fine, gets deployed, and then the thing doesn't work properly. And the problem is once you've deployed something or once you've designed and approved something you don't really want to redesign it and reapprove it. So what's the one thing that you can change in the product? It's the SIM. So what you end up doing is going through round and round and round in circles with different SIM vendors, because the only thing you can change in the device is the SIM. When in the end, actually, it's probably an inappropriate protocol for the module technology that's been picked. So by keeping it all under one roof, again, you get this consultative approach.
Great. Thank you both for that one. Guys, I believe that's all the time that we have for today. I realize that we did not get to all of the questions, so give us just a little bit and we will be sure to reach out to you individually to be sure that we answer all of those. Please be sure to check your inboxes in the coming days for that replay link. We will be sending that out. Adam, Sean, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks to everybody who joined us.
Thank you.